So, lately, there's been a whole lot of outrage about the topless meta on Twitch. Essentially, this. Basically, women streaming looking like this, and people are upset about it. So today, I wanted to talk about it a little bit because I think that there are a couple of really important points that I don't hear a lot of people talking about. The first thing that makes me really sad, because I am somebody that tries to normalize sexuality in a myriad of ways, and one of the things that makes me really sad is seeing sex workers fight against this, because it is sad to see people of the opposite group fight against something, but it's even more sad when people of the same group fight against something. So for instance, it's one thing when men discriminate against sexuality, or when men discriminate against women. It's a whole other thing when women discriminate against women. And so similarly, it's one thing for people that are not involved in sex work to discriminate against sex work, but it's a whole other thing to see sex workers discriminating against sex work. And I think that that's really sad. So here is an example of what I'm talking about, where somebody put out, to be fair, like a very well-worded post of like their concerns of why they think that this should not be on Twitch, and they are involved in sex work. And so I just wanted to talk about this a little bit and talk about a point that I'm not seeing a whole lot, which is the idea of advertising. So if you don't know, advertising kind of makes the world go round. And whether you like that or not, that's sort of the reality of things. And one of the things that people are really struggling with in the sex work industry is being discriminated against. They don't have a home to go to. They keep getting kicked off of platforms. This tweet said it pretty well, where it says, "No offense, but as someone also on the A spectrum, it's weird to me that people think porn is so widespread on the internet when the exact opposite is happening. If you've been paying attention to website content, policies, and legislation for the last 10 years. Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, DeviantArt, Tumblr, YouTube, Twitch, and TikTok don't allow any sexually explicit content. Most sites that allow paid transactions are hostile towards sex workers, especially after this Backpage is shut down and Craigslist adult services removal." So the reason that a lot of this is happening is because advertisers run the world and payment processors run the world. And advertisers and payment processors don't want their content associated with sexuality. But the question is, why don't they want their content associated with sexuality? Is it because they have something against sexuality or sex workers themselves? No, absolutely not. In fact, a lot of those big wigs are hiring prostitutes anyway. The reason that they don't want their content or their products associated with sexualized content is because of us, of all of us. The fact that anytime anything sexual happens, everyone is in an outrage, and like they get calls from angry parents being like, "Oh my God, I can't believe that you would let your product be associated with this sexualized content." That is the reason that sex workers are so discriminated against and are not allowed on any platforms. And so I think that the problem is that if you want to normalize sexuality, it can't just be on the sort of like shadow banned platforms. It can't just be on platforms like OnlyFans. If we want to normalize sexuality, it has to be a societal-wide thing. Because as long as we keep discriminating against sexuality on everywhere except the places that sexuality is relegated to, what's going to happen is that sexuality is going to be continually kicked off of every platform, because the payment processors aren't going to want to process the payments for sexual platforms. And so it's just going to keep happening and keep happening and keep happening. And it's really sad because as of the time of this recording, Twitch reversed their decision to allow sexual content on Twitch. Basically what they had done is they had said, "Hey, listen, if you are doing like artistic nude content, it's okay, so like if artists want to draw breasts or butt or vagina or labia or whatever, they can do that as long as, it's not explicitly sexual, as long as it's not like two people having sex. Um, and they reversed that decision today. So effective today, we are rolling back the artistic nudity changes. Moving forward, depictions of real or fictional nudity won't be allowed on Twitch, regardless of the medium, which I think is a real step backwards for this fight that, we're fighting in normalizing sexuality. And so now I want to address one of the main arguments that I've been seeing, which is this argument of like for the kids. And before I proceed in this argument, one of the things that I want to say is that I think that people have really forgotten how to listen and understand each other. I think that Madison said it really well on Twitter, where she talks a little bit about how they're just what she is trying to say is something that, like she wants to have actual discourse about, like discourse about, like she actually wants to communicate a message and like have people hear it and like listen to the counter arguments. Like she wants it to actually be a civilized discussion, which unfortunately is something that is very hard to find on the internet these days. And so in the vein of sort of like, reaching across the table and saying like, hey, I totally understand, I get it, that when it comes to sexuality and people being abused sexually, it is a horrible, horrible topic. Like I have people in my life that have gone through sexual abuse, and it is awful. The effects of it are just awful. And so I totally understand the fear that surrounds this topic and why people want to protect so vehemently against it. That being said, I want to address the way that people are going about this argument. So I've seen the argument that a lot of these streamers that are doing the like topless meta or whatever are trying to groom kids by directing them to their OnlyFans. So here's an example. These people know exactly the kind of audience they're drawing in, as well as exactly where they're leading them. And they're basically saying that they're leading them to their OnlyFans sites, and they shouldn't be doing that because they're kids. But what I don't understand about this argument is that those same people that are making the argument that, they're like grooming kids and leading them to OnlyFans also say that the reason that it is okay for sexuality to exist on a place like OnlyFans is because there's age verification there. And so even if they are leading kids to OnlyFans, presumably if OnlyFans has a good age verification process, like those people are claiming, then it should be fine, right? Like they'll just get hit with a wall. They won't be able to pass that age verification. The other thing is that kids in modern day are already so exposed to so much like harder core pornography than what is on Twitch. But I don't see people getting up in arms about that. I don't see people getting up in arms about all the tube sites. I don't see any discourse about that. And like the tube sites are a huge problem. Like tube sites are stealing loads and loads of work and paying sex workers horribly. But like no one seems to be talking about that. No one seems to be talking about like the issues that exist from kids like growing up as iPad kids and like having constant access to the internet where they can access all of this stuff. Like I've talked to substitute teachers that talk about how when they are at school and trying to help kids, learn and get an education, it is so difficult because they're constantly doing things like playing Roblox and, playing Fortnite, and like there's just no control over what kids are doing on the internet. And so the idea that Twitch is the problem and that we need to stop the people on Twitch from exposing kids to sexuality is just bonkers to me, because it is such a small platform. Platforms like TikTok and YouTube are infinitely bigger and have worse content. way worse content than what we're seeing in the topless meta. But no one is up in arms about it. It's only Twitch. I don't get it. I honestly would love to know what the difference is for people. Where the outrage comes specifically for Twitch, even though like this absolutely exists on TikTok and YouTube, and like pointing people directly to OnlyFans, and we just don't hear anything about it. And the other thing is, if you are going to, so I've seen this argument or this analogy where someone was comparing, if you allow sexual content on Twitch, it's the equivalent of allowing strippers into Chuck E. Cheese, because Twitch is supposed to be this like platform for kids. And if you are making that argument, I think that there are a lot more concerning things on Twitch as a platform for kids, which, by the way, YouTube and TikTok are arguably both way bigger platforms for kids than Twitch is. However, if you are, let's just say for the sake of argument, okay, fine, Twitch is a platform for kids, then there are way bigger issues. Let me just give you a few examples. Grand Theft Auto, where you can literally have sex with a hooker and then murder her. Where you can literally have sex with a hooker and then murder her, and like, it's totally fine. People are totally fine with Grand Theft Auto. No problem. Horror games, where there are atrocities done to children in horror games. Just absolute atrocities. Things that like no one should be thinking about or looking at. Even adults shouldn't be thinking about or looking at. Horrible, horrible things done to children in horror games. Nobody bats an eye. In fact, people laugh at horror games. They think that they're funny. They love seeing their favorite streamers freak out about horror games. Things like Mortal Kombat, where the finisher moves involve things like stabbing knives through people's eyeballs. But guess what? Like, that's totally fine. But if a woman shows her breasts on Twitch, oh no, absolutely not. Valorant, where they're one of the biggest games in the world, where there are terrorists and bombs, but women's boobs, absolutely not. Unacceptable. And then what's really bonkers to me is like one of the games that has been blowing up and that everybody has been celebrating is Baldur's Gate, where you are constantly having sex with people, but no one had an issue with this. It is only when a woman tries to like make a career off of her sexuality, when she tries to monetize her sexuality, actually make some money and take advantage of her sexuality, that everyone is up in arms. Not to mention the inherent like sexism that is involved in this entire argument, because we all know that if a man were topless on Twitch, if a man were streaming and he had no shirt on, no one would bat an eye. Wouldn't be a big deal. But for women, it's horrible. It's a horrible offense. And like, guys, like, it's literally just more fat. It's literally just more fat on the chest. That's it. That's the only difference. It's crazy. And so I think ultimately what this comes down to is conditioning. That our roots are from a puritanical, religious society. And I think that unfortunately because of that, a lot of people, even sex workers, have a lot of internalized shame about sexuality being okay. And so rather than working through that, rather than working through the internal shame that they feel about their sexuality and about sexuality in general, they lash out and project it onto other people and onto other places. And therefore, the like reactions that we get when it comes to sexuality are way stronger than when it comes to violence. Like, I just want y'all to think about this for a second. You can have limbs chopped off in movies and have it still be PG-13. But if a woman shows a tit on screen in a movie, it's immediately R-rated. Isn't that crazy to you? That tits are a greater offense than somebody's arm being chopped off. Do y'all understand that? Or even something super popular like the Avengers movies, where buildings are blown up, alien terrorist attacks happen, worlds are destroyed, people die, And that is worse than a woman showing her tits on a stream. And I think that if you really take a second, and like just take a second to think about this before you leave a hateful comment, take a second to think about this and just think about what your internal reaction is right now. And how enraged you feel about this. And just take a second to ask yourself, why am I so mad about sexuality on Twitch? And I think that if you really dig down, it's not about the kids. It's about you. It's about what's in here. And I get that. I think that makes a lot of sense. And you deserve to work through that. Because like presumably you thought something was okay and got shut down repeatedly. And so now, like, in order to, like, pay it back, you're going to shut others down. I can't do it. They shouldn't be able to do it. And I think that, to use a cheesy quote, an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. And I think that the more that we can start actually accepting each other and celebrating each other and helping each other to work through these things rather than attacking one another, I think the more that we will be able to heal. And I really hope that one day we can get to a place where sexuality is seen as a normal, natural part of the human experience, and violence is treated the way that sexuality is now. Because I think that that's the real problem. So thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time. Bye.